Lifeonaire again. I'm going to come to you with another topic, and this is a really important topic, and we're going to be talking about dealing with contractors. I'm going to talk to you about two key things when it comes to working with contractors. One of them is having your contractor's agreement and negotiating with them. And the contractor's agreement was something that I had really learned about over time, that there were two big things that I had to deal with when it came to contractors. You know, as we're out there and we're doing rehabs, the two problems that everybody has problems with when it comes to their contractors is communication and money. So those two issues, communication and money, need to be addressed. I want to recommend to you that you always put everything in writing. This is really important. You know, throughout the years, you have probably heard that when it comes to contractors, between price, quality, and service, you get to pick two. You know, you don't get all three of them. You can only get two of them. You get price, quality, or service. If you're going to get all three of them, you're going to pay dearly for them. You know, as a rehabber, I need to get good price. I also want good quality, and I'd like to get good service. But if there's any area where I have to sacrifice, it's usually going to be on the service side of things. But I need to do the best job that I can to manage that and make sure that I'm not sacrificing on the service side of things too much. So I want to have my agreements in writing. You can't do verbal agreements when it comes to working with contractors. I promise you, if you've already done it, you already know that. You probably have been bit. You know, if it's a little tiny job, it's one thing, but the moment you get into a larger scope of work, something always comes back and it doesn't work out the way that you thought it would. You need to have a clear scope of work of what it is that you want within those agreements. You see, when I first got started, I would bring a contractor out and tell him to take a look at this bathroom and say that I want to go ahead and I want to get this bathroom redone. And, you know, later in the day, I could bring another contractor out there and say, I want to get this bathroom redone. And, you know, they'd come back and they give me quotes. One of them quotes me $850. The other one quotes me $3,500. And I'm like, well, why are these prices so different? Well, the one guy who heard that I want to get the bathroom redone, in his mind, he's thinking, well, he just wants to paint put a new vinyl floor down and maybe replace the vanity. The other guy heard he wants to gut the bathroom and I got to take everything out and I want to put in all new stuff. But when I just say I want to redo the bathroom and make it look newer, I'm not really communicating with them. I need to communicate the specifics of what it is I'm looking for. A good contractor will ask the right questions, but not all of them know to ask those questions. So the more detailed you can be, the better you can make your relationship with the contractor, so you can focus on price, quality, and service. And so communication is going to be important. Now, paying them is where the other issue comes in. Let's face it, if we want to get the best pricing, we're typically going to be dealing with people who aren't charging too much, and as a result, they don't have a lot of excess money. Their lives tend to not be where they have everything together, but they're really working more of a week to week or month to month themselves, trying to get their bills paid. And you know, they like just working and being paid fairly for the work that they do. They don't necessarily have aspirations of getting rich. If they did, they would charge different than what they do. So we have to keep that in mind. They're not people who have a lot of excess. They don't have excess wealth or anything to work with. And the money that they're going to make on this job is going to pay their bills right in the near future. So you need to keep that in mind. As you are sitting there and you're negotiating with them and trying to determine what your pricing should be with them, I want to teach you how to get the best price. But what's even more important than that, going back to how to pay them, here's the number one thing that I want you to keep in mind. If you owe them more than what they owe you, they will keep coming back because you owe them. If they owe you more than what you owe them, in other words, you've given them a deposit and they now owe you work, they're less likely to come back when you need for them to come back, because when the money runs out, they're going to go somewhere else where the money is. If you're giving them deposits, there's a good likelihood that they might spend that on finishing up another job or for paying their bills, and they don't have the money to actually buy the materials. So in that regard, I don't ever advance money for materials. I pay for labor, and I don't pay for the labor until after the work is done. You haven't earned it yet. So I pay for 100% of the labor after 100% of the job is done. I know there's a lot of contractors out there who won't operate that way, but those are not the contractors that I deal with. I find contractors who will work that way. And so I'm constantly dangling the money in front of them like a carrot. As long as I owe them more than what they owe me, they're going to come back. As long as they know there's money still left in the job, they will be there. The moment there's not enough money left in the job, if they have bills to pay this week, they're going to go work at another job where they can get money this week so that they can pay their bills. That doesn't mean that they're never going to finish my job. They're just going to try to fit it in when it's convenient for them. That doesn't work for me as a rehabber. I need for my houses to get done and get them to completion so that I can put them on the market and sell them. So I'm constantly trying to make sure that their profits are held off to the end. I do need to make sure my contractors are making money along the way so that they can survive. But I don't want them to owe me more than what I owe them. So I'm always holding that money out in front of them. You need to be careful about paying them for partial work. You know, they might be working, say, on the roof, and the roof is 80 or 90% done, and they ask you to give 80 to 90% of the money. That is a mistake, because at this point, it really will cost a lot more than the 10 or 20% left to bring somebody else out there to finish it if they don't. But it also isn't enough of an incentive to get them out there to finish it if you need it done tomorrow. And so if I were to ever make that exception and advance somebody money, my rule is I pay 100% of the roof draw when 100% of the roof is done. Until you get it 100% done, I'm not giving you anything. If I make an exception and you're 90% done, but you're not 100, and you need to get some money right now because you got to pay your guys or something, I'm going to give you 25% of that money so that there's still enough incentive. They say, gosh, the most of that roofing draw is coming to me and I just have a little bit of work to do. I better get out there and finish it. If I give them too much money, they have no incentive to come back out and finish it. So always hold the money out in front of them. So now negotiating with your contractors. What is typical is people go and this has been talked about over and over and over again. So it's, you know, what you do is you call up 3 contractors, you get quotes, and then you pick the best one. The problem is that most people call 3 expensive contractors, so they get 3 expensive quotes and they just pick the best of 3 expensive ones. That's not the way to get the best deals, but that is what a typical general contractor would do. They call up the 3 most well-known guys in town, get quotes from them, and then they take the best of those 3 quotes. And they treat you as if they just did a great job for you because they called 3 people and that was the best one. The problem is when you call 3 expensive contractors, you get 3 expensive quotes. You need to know what the real pricing is. And sometimes this is going to take practice. But you know, getting into the real estate investing world, asking other real estate investors, what do you pay for a new furnace and central air conditioning in one of your houses? What do you pay to replace it? What do you pay to put in all new stuff? And getting numbers from them and starting to learn what those numbers are. Most of the time, you're going to find that the prices are about half of what the big guys charge. You know, the big guys in town where I live will charge $12,000 to $14,000 for a whole new HVAC system. Well, I get them done for under $7,000, $6,700 or something like that to have all new ductwork, a new furnace, and new central air put into my new houses. But the other guys in town, the big ones, will charge me twice that. Same thing happens with plumbers. The big plumbers in town will charge me a lot more. I need to know what the real pricing is. And so there's a couple of things that I want to share with you as far as negotiating tips. One thing that I love to do, let's just say I'm speaking with a roofer for the first time. And I ask them how much a roof is going to cost. And they're going to go off and do their measurements, and they're going to give me a price. And they're going to give me a price pretty quickly based off of their measurements. Now, what they're doing is they have what they call a rule of thumb pricing. You know, that rule of thumb is, you know, based off of this, this is what we charge, and they get it done. Plumbers do this too. Plumber says, how many kitchens, how many bathrooms, 1 kitchen, 2.5 bathrooms, that's a $9,000 job. It's already been predetermined in their mind. They know what it's going to be. Rule of thumb pricing is not in your best interest, and this is what many of them will do. They're accounting for all different kinds of things already. They can throw out a price to you quickly because their profits already built in. They've already figured in their fudge factors. They've got all kinds of things, and it is the most expensive pricing. It is not the best pricing that you can get. And so I want you to break that. You need to get away from the rule of thumb pricing. And so a roofer comes on out, and then they just sort of give me a price on the roof, and then I'll ask them this. I'll say, okay, so listen, I'll go ahead, I'll buy the materials. Let me ask you this. How long is it going to take for you to get that job done? Now, all contractors typically say, it's only going to take me a couple of days, and I'll say, well, how many guys are going to be out there? And it'll be 2. I'm going to share this with you. On my houses, my new houses, we've had a guy who by himself single-handedly could put the roof on in 1 day. It was a long day, a 12-hour day, but he would put it on in 1 day. Most of the time, 2 guys can knock it out in a day. The worst case is 2 guys should take 2 days. The one guy who did it by himself in a day was he just was a workhorse, and he would just get it done. But 2 guys, 2 days. And that's what they're going to tell me. They're going to say, well, it'll take us a couple of days to get it done. Me and another guy will have it done in 2 days. And, after they just told me $5,000, for labor, I got to take a step back and say, okay, whoa, wait a minute. You make $5,000 for 2 days worth of work, you and another guy? I'm like, I should become a roofer. You guys are the ones making all the money. I'm like, no, seriously, how much money do you need to make? How much money do you need to make in a day? What do you pay your guy? And, I mean, you're paying him a couple $100 for the day, $150 for the day. How much do you need to make? And, now we're changing that conversation a little bit. I want you to make money. What do you need to make $400 a day and pay your guy a couple hundred? It's $600 a day, $1,200 for 2 days. It seems fair to me. I'm going to supply all the materials. You guys just get on up there and put on the roof. I pay you $1,200. And almost every instance, when you put it to them that way, most of them are going to say, yeah, okay, I'll take the work. There are some who are going to say no, and that's okay, because there's somebody out there who will say yes. $1,200 is a lot of money for 2 guys to get on top of a roof and put some shingles on it for you over the course of 2 days. They make good money doing that. What I don't want to do is pay that rule of thumb price of $4,000 to $5,000 to get it done. Even $3,000 or $2,500 when I can get it done for half of that. And so you want to change the conversation and start focusing on, well, how long is it going to take for you to do that? I mean, really? You get paid that much money? I'm in the wrong business. I need to start doing that, because you guys are making a whole lot more money than I do just, doing that. And, and I just ask them, seriously, what do you need to get paid for a day? And you just told me it'll take you 2 days. I'll even pay you for 3 days. And then, if I take that approach with them, they tend to realize that, okay, this guy's not really just trying to rob me. I just told him take me 2 and he's willing to pay me for 3 days, but I still end up with a better price by taking that approach. I want them to do well. I don't want them to go out and lose money, but I also don't want them to charge me so much that I can't make money. I want to, the type of people who I'm looking for are people who are thankful for the work and they're happy to just get paid for the work that they do. Somebody who's got that business mindset and is trying to build a big business and they want to build in a whole bunch of fluff and extra profit and all that, that's not the person who I need working on my houses. Instead, I am looking for the smaller contractors, the one-man show, the one whose office is in their truck. That is the person who I want to get out there. And so now there's other things. As you are working through your budget and you have numbers, here's another thing that I find. There are many investors who happen to have some resources, they have money, and when they actually get a quote from a contractor and it was more than what they had budgeted, because they have money, they just pay it and they assume that that's what the price has to be because the contractor said so. But instead, I go back to that contractor and I say, okay, look, your number of 4,000 isn't going to work for me. I only had 2,700 budgeted for that. We need to figure out how do we get it to 2,700. And I make the contractor go back and sharpen their pencil or figure out another way to get this done to where I can accomplish what I need to accomplish, but knowing that I can only spend 2,700. If that contractor keeps running into it, or they're unwilling and they're not willing to do it, that's okay. I'm willing to find somebody else within reason. Sometimes it's more important I'll spend the money just to get the job done, but I'm still going to be looking for another contractor of that nature who's going to give me better pricing in the future. But when we get out there, eventually I just start saying to contractors, here's the deal. I'm willing to pay $2,700 for this part of the job. If you can do it, great. If not, that's fine. I'll go find somebody else. And you will be surprised at how many of them will actually accept the work. The bigger companies will say no every time, but the smaller companies, the one-man show, if they don't have a bunch of work that's lined up, they're almost always going to figure out a way. They want the work, and they know that, you know, working for me is going to be consistent work. All the other people who they work for, they're typically going to do one job and then that's it, and they're now out there marketing, trying to sell their next job. With me, I can get better pricing because I keep them coming back consistently. So keep that in mind. Know your pricing and know your budget, because ultimately you have to do everything you can to stick to them. Get to know what the real pricing is. Just because 3 contractors tell you that HVAC is $12,000 doesn't mean it's $12,000. It's probably closer to 6 or half of that. And once you start to understand this and you start talking to the right people in the industry, you can begin to start saving a lot of money on your rehabs. Now, one tip, where is a good place to find rehabbers or find contractors? One is drive around and look for other rehabs. Other investors have already done the homework. They've already found some of the best priced people. Stop in at those jobs and talk to the people who are working on those job sites and ask them if they're looking for more work, especially if they're subcontractors, if they're drywall guys or they're HVAC people or painters. You know, ask them, do you do stuff on the side? Are you looking for more work? Would you be interested in doing work for me? Another place, and this is one of the best places of all to find people, is in new home construction developments, particularly the big corporate ones, because they have trained those guys in there to work for really cheap. You know, some of you might find it difficult to believe that a roof gets installed for $25 or $35 a square, and if you don't understand what that is, don't sweat that right now. Just know that that's really cheap. That's really cheap. In the rehab world, you know, you're happy if you can get it for 75 or 100, but on these new home construction developments, it might be $25 to $35 that these guys are installing a roof for. And that pricing, those guys have already been trained to work for that. And if you can go in there, they're probably already working for another company. Some of them have their license and they're working underneath someone else. But you just ask them, are you guys looking for any other work? Do you want to do something on the side? I understand you're working here all week, but would you like to do my roof on the weekend? Even if you paid them twice as much as what they're getting paid in that new home development, you're going to save money, because, and for them, it's a motivating factor, because they're going to get paid twice as much to do your roof as they do where they're at. So they will take an interest in it. Those are great places for you to be able to find contractors. But start to get to know the pricing by asking other people what they're paying. And then as a worst case, if you can ask them for referrals and be able to have that price, then you're always just shopping to try to do better. The worst thing you can do is open up the yellow pages and call the people with the big ads. They got to pay for those big ads, and they got to pay for all their vans, and they got to pay for the big staff and the buildings and everything that they're in. And they have a lot more overhead than the smaller guy. The typical person who you want to bring in and hire to do these jobs is what I refer to as a working foreman. They're the person who is out there swinging the hammer. They're actually doing work, and they're the boss. And they can run that part of the project. And in some cases, my project manager is that same person. My project manager isn't a person wearing khakis walking around with a clipboard. My project managers have a belt on with a tool belt, you know, and their hammer and everything else, and are actually out there doing work, yet managing the project at the same time. That is where I get my best deals, and it's the same people that you need to look for. So I want to go ahead and just summarize some of this. I want you to just be patient and focus on people who have the low overhead, but the key things I want you to take away from here is contractor's agreement. Make sure it's in writing. Be very detailed with your scope of work. Always owe your contractor more than he owes you. That's how you keep them coming back to the job site. Don't advance them monies, because once you advance them monies, they've got to typically go make that up somewhere else. So don't advance them. Pay in full immediately for work that is done in full. So don't give them partial payments. Don't buy the sob stories. I got to pay my guys today. Just say, I want to give you 100% of the money, but you need to be 100% done. So if you can get this done, say by tomorrow, I'll give you 100% of your money by tomorrow, and handle it that way rather than giving partial payments. And then finally, when you are negotiating with them, don't let the rule of thumb pricing be what dictates what you pay. Instead, ask them, how long does it take? And then break it down from there and say, well, if it's only going to be a couple of days, I really need to give you $5,000 for that. How about, I'll pay you and your guys whatever it is you guys get paid for, a day, and you'll find that you'll save a lot of money. So, going to wrap up this session. I hope that these tips will help you as you move forward in negotiating with contractors. This is again Steve Cook with Lifeonaire. See you in another session.